The alarm clock rang at 5 in the morning, its sharp sound cutting through the silence of a small one-bedroom apartment. Marcus turned over quickly, silencing it before it could wake his daughter. He lay still for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, his heart already heavy with the weight of the day ahead. Today was important, more important than any day he could remember in years. Today, he had an interview that could change his life. But before thinking about himself, Marcus thought about his daughter. The room was dim, lit only by the weak glow of a streetlight sneaking through the blinds. The air smelled faintly of rain, as if the city outside was still half asleep. Slowly, Marcus sat up, rubbing his eyes, trying to push away the fatigue that clung to him. He had worked late the night before doing odd jobs, but that did not matter now. He had promised his daughter that things would get better, and today might be the first step toward that promise. He tiptoed across the room and looked at the small bed where his daughter Layla lay curled up beneath a blanket. She was 7 years old, with curly hair spread across her pillow and a small stuffed bear in her arms. Marcus's heart softened as he watched her. She looked peaceful, unaware of the battles her father fought every single day just to keep their little world standing. He whispered, "Daddy's got this, sweetheart. Today's our day." Moving quietly into the tiny kitchen, Marcus opened the refrigerator. It was nearly empty. A half carton of milk, a couple of eggs, and some bread slices were all that remained. He sighed, but managed a small smile. It would have to be enough. He set a pan on the stove and began cooking. The sound of sizzling eggs filled the apartment. Soon Layla's small footsteps could be heard. She appeared in the doorway, rubbing her sleepy eyes, her bear still in hand. "Morning, Daddy," she mumbled. "Good morning, Princess," Marcus replied warmly. "Breakfast is almost ready." She climbed onto a chair, swinging her legs. "Do you think you'll get the job today?" she asked, her voice filled with innocent curiosity. Marcus froze for a second. The truth was, he did not know. He was nervous, unsure, and worried about whether his second-hand suit would be enough to impress anyone, but he did not let those doubts touch his daughter's heart. "I think so," he said with a reassuring smile. "I think today is the start of something better for us." Her face brightened and she clapped her hands softly. "Then we can get a bigger house? Maybe with a garden?" Marcus laughed quietly. "One step at a time, sweetheart. First, Daddy needs to do his best today." They ate together at the small table, talking about little things, her favorite cartoons, the drawings she made at school, and how she wanted to be a teacher when she grew up. Marcus listened carefully, nodding at every detail, his heart swelling with pride. For him, every word from his daughter was a reminder of why he worked so hard. After breakfast, Marcus carefully dressed in the suit he had prepared. It was not new, but he had cleaned and pressed it the night before. He tied his tie in front of the small bathroom mirror, adjusting it several times until it looked just right. Then he polished his shoes, even though the leather was slightly cracked. He looked at himself one last time in the mirror. His face showed tiredness, but his eyes carried determination. "You can do this," he whispered to himself. Layla appeared in the doorway, watching him. "You look like a boss, Daddy," she said with a grin. Marcus chuckled, kneeling down to her level. "That's the plan, Princess. One day I'll be the boss and you'll have everything you dream of." She hugged him tightly, wrapping her small arms around his neck. "Good luck." That hug was all the strength Marcus needed. He dropped Layla off at a neighbor's apartment where she would be safe until school started. The neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Jenkins, gave Marcus a kind smile. She knew how hard he was trying, and she often encouraged him. "Go knock them dead, Marcus," she said. "I'll do my best," he replied, giving her a grateful nod before heading out. The city greeted him with wet streets and gray skies. The rain from the night before had left puddles on the sidewalks, reflecting the faint glow of street lamps. Marcus pulled his coat tighter around himself, careful not to ruin his suit. Every step felt like a march toward destiny. He thought about the job, an entry-level management position at a logistics company. It was not glamorous, but it was stable, with benefits and enough pay to finally give his daughter a better life. As he walked, Marcus rehearsed possible interview questions in his head. "What are your strengths? Why should we hire you?" he answered silently, practicing confidence. His heart raced at the thought of sitting in that office, facing people who would judge his worth in a matter of minutes. But as he walked, he also thought about his past. He remembered the struggles after his daughter's mother had left, leaving him alone to raise Layla. He remembered working 2, sometimes 3 jobs, just to keep food on the table. He remembered nights when he went without eating so that Layla would never know hunger. All of it had led to this moment. This job interview was not just about him, it was about proving to himself and to the world that he could rise above the struggles. The streets grew busier as the morning advanced. Cars splashed through puddles, horns honked, and people hurried with umbrellas overhead. Marcus walked quickly, determined not to be late. He knew he had only one chance to make an impression, and he did not want to waste it. Yet beneath his determination, there was a quiet fear. What if they judged him for being a single father? What if they thought he lacked experience or that his suit made him look less professional than the other candidates? He pushed those thoughts away, reminding himself of the lessons he taught Layla. Always do your best no matter what anyone thinks. At one point, he stopped near a store window, glancing at his reflection. He adjusted his tie again, straightened his shoulders, and gave himself a nod. "This is your time," he whispered. The rain had slowed to a drizzle now, but the ground was still slick. Marcus carefully avoided puddles, not wanting to stain his shoes. Each step carried him closer to the possibility of a new future. But destiny has a way of testing hearts at the very moment they are closest to a breakthrough. Marcus did not know that the next few minutes would present him with a choice, one that would cost him dearly, but also change his life forever. For now, though, he walked with hope. His mind was on his daughter, his heart filled with determination and his eyes fixed on the path ahead. He believed he was walking toward his interview, but in truth, he was walking toward something far greater. And so, in the quiet struggle before dawn, in the small acts of love for his daughter, and in the courage to keep going despite everything, Marcus began a journey that would soon inspire everyone who heard it. The morning air was heavy with the smell of wet asphalt, and the city was slowly waking up, its streets alive with the sound of car engines, rushing footsteps and distant chatter. Marcus moved with purpose, his shoes clicking against the damp pavement, his heart set on the interview that he believed could be the turning point of his life. He tried to push away the nervousness that lurked in his chest, forcing himself to focus on the rhythm of his steps. He reminded himself over and over that he was not only walking for himself but for Layla too. Everything he did was for her, every sacrifice, every long night, every early morning. The thought of her little smile gave him strength when his legs felt heavy, and it gave him courage when doubt whispered in his mind. He imagined how her eyes would shine if he came home tonight with good news, how she would jump up and down, telling him that she always knew her daddy was the best. That vision was powerful enough to silence the fear, at least for a while. He passed by store windows, catching glimpses of his own reflection. He straightened his back each time, pulling his shoulders square, wanting to look as confident as possible. He whispered answers under his breath, practicing what he might say if they asked about his skills, about his experiences, about his goals. "I am hardworking. I don't give up easily. I know how to lead because I have had to lead my own life." He rehearsed these sentences again and again, his lips barely moving, his voice quiet under the hum of the city. People passed by, some rushing with coffee in their hands, others clutching umbrellas, but none of them knew what this day meant to him. To them, he was just another man in a suit. To him, he was a father fighting for a future. As he moved further downtown, the buildings grew taller and the streets busier. His shoes picked up tiny splashes of water from the puddles, but he tried not to notice. He thought about the office where his interview was scheduled, imagining the tall glass doors, the waiting room with polished chairs, and the professionals in their crisp suits. He pictured himself sitting among them, trying not to feel out of place. He knew they might have more experience, better suits, and stronger connections, but he also knew none of them carried the weight he carried in his heart. They might want the job for ambition, but he needed it for survival. That difference gave him strength. Marcus paused at a traffic light, waiting for the green signal. He adjusted his tie, wiping a drop of sweat from his forehead even though the air was cool. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, leaving a thin sheen on the streets that reflected the glow of the lights. He glanced at his watch. He was on time, but just barely. He quickened his pace, determined not to let anything stand between him and that office. Yet in life, the most important lessons often arrive uninvited, and the most important opportunities often hide behind inconveniences. Just ahead, Near the corner of a quiet street, Marcus noticed a small commotion. A red convertible was pulled over, and beside it stood a woman in a bright orange dress, her hands on her head in frustration. The car looked old, its hood slightly open, steam rising into the damp air. The woman's shoes were in her hand, her bare feet touching the wet pavement. Her legs were splashed with mud, and her face carried the helplessness of someone caught off guard. People walked past her, glancing briefly but moving on, too busy to stop, too caught up in their own schedules. Marcus slowed down, his eyes fixed on her. His mind screamed at him to keep walking, to stay focused on his interview, to remember what was at stake. He told himself she would figure it out, or someone else would help her. But his feet refused to move forward. There was something about her face, something about the way she looked around with desperation, that tugged at him. He thought of Layla and wondered how he would want the world to treat her if she were ever in trouble. That thought pierced through his hesitation. With a sigh, Marcus stepped off his path and walked toward the woman. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said gently. "Do you need help?" The woman looked up at him, surprised that someone had actually stopped. Her eyes were sharp yet tired, and her voice carried both relief and embarrassment. I think my car gave up on me, and I slipped in the puddle trying to check it. I'm fine, but it's just one of those mornings." Marcus offered a small smile. "Looks like it. Here, let me see if I can help." She hesitated. "You don't have to. I'm sure you have somewhere to be." He glanced at his watch again. His interview was close, dangerously close, but he pushed the thought away. "It's all right. Sometimes we just need someone to stop." The woman gave him a grateful look as he crouched down by her side. He pulled a small handkerchief from his pocket, the only one he owned, and began gently wiping the mud from her ankle. She blinked in surprise at the gesture, clearly unused to such kindness from a stranger. Marcus did not say much as he worked, focusing on cleaning her injury and making sure she could stand properly again. He ignored the water soaking into the knees of his pants, ignored the rain dampening his shoulders. In that moment, all that mattered was helping someone who had no one else stopping for her. As he handed her the handkerchief and helped her slip her shoes back on, he finally looked at her directly. Her face was elegant, with sharp features softened by a sense of exhaustion. She gave him a smile, small but sincere. "Thank you," she said. "I didn't expect anyone to stop," Marcus shrugged. "Sometimes we all need a hand. Take care of yourself." He stood up, brushing off his knees, and without waiting for recognition or thanks, he turned to leave. He glanced at his watch again and felt his stomach sink. He was late. The interview that had meant everything to him was slipping away. His steps grew heavier as he walked down the street, each one weighed with the realization of what he had just lost. But in his heart, there was no regret. He had chosen compassion over ambition, humanity over haste. He thought of Layla again, and he told himself that no matter what happened now, at least he had stayed true to the kind of man he wanted her to see him as. What he did not know was that this small act of kindness, this pause on the road to opportunity, would open a door far greater than the one he thought he had missed. Marcus walked away with hurried steps, his heart pounding with the heavy realization that the interview he had prepared for so long was already slipping out of reach. Every glance at his watch felt like a knife cutting deeper, reminding him of the minutes lost. The office was not far, but the time was unforgiving. He could imagine the polished receptionist glancing at the clock, marking his absence, the interviewer shaking their head at his lateness, perhaps already moving on to the next candidate who had arrived on time. The dream he had carried for weeks felt like it was breaking apart before it could even begin. Yet even in that rising despair, there was no bitterness in his heart. He had done what felt right. He had chosen to stop when no one else would, and though that choice cost him dearly, he could not bring himself to regret it. The drizzle had almost faded now, leaving behind a sky that was slowly clearing, its gray clouds parting to reveal faint streaks of morning light. The city was buzzing more loudly, shops opening their doors, buses and cars filling the streets, people moving with purpose as if the rain had never slowed them. Marcus tried to match their pace, his shoes striking the pavement harder as though speed alone could turn back the clock. But deep down he knew he was late. He felt the weight of lost opportunity pressing on his shoulders, heavier with every block he crossed. He replayed the image of the woman in his mind, her orange dress bright against the gray street, her helpless eyes when no one stopped, the way she had looked at him with surprise and gratitude when he crouched beside her. He wondered if she had managed to get help now, if someone else had come by, or if she was still stranded. He pushed the thought aside, forcing his focus back on the interview, but the memory lingered warm and heavy at the same time. Finally, Marcus reached the tall building where the interview was scheduled. Its glass windows towered over him, reflecting the city like a giant mirror. People in business attire streamed in and out, their shoes clicking on the polished marble steps. He paused for a moment, straightened his suit jacket, wiped his damp hands against the fabric, and took a deep breath. This was his last chance. He hurried inside, his heart pounding, his mind filled with silent prayers. The lobby was pristine, with shining floors, sleek furniture, and the faint hum of quiet conversations. A receptionist sat behind a large desk, typing quickly, her face calm but professional. Marcus approached, trying to steady his voice. "Good morning," he said. I had an interview scheduled at 9. The receptionist looked at the clock on the wall before glancing back at him. It was nearly 20 minutes past. Her polite smile faltered just slightly. "I'm sorry, sir, the interviews began earlier. The panel has already moved on to the next candidate." Marcus's heart sank. He opened his mouth to explain, to ask for another chance, but the words caught in his throat. What could he say? That he had stopped to help a stranger on the street? Would they even believe him, or would they think it was just an excuse? He stood there silent, feeling the disappointment wash over him like a wave. "Perhaps you could leave your resume," the receptionist offered kindly. As if sensing his struggle, Marcus nodded numbly, handing over the envelope he had guarded so carefully. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice nearly breaking. He walked out of the building with slow steps, his head lowered, his chest heavy. The city that had once looked full of possibility now felt like a blur of noise and motion around him. He found a bench near the corner of the street and sat down, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands covering his face. For a moment he let the weight of it all crash over him. The long nights preparing, the hope he had carried, the promises he had made to his daughter. All of it gone, undone by the simple act of stopping to help. But in the middle of his despair, a small voice inside whispered, reminding him that he had done the right thing. He had chosen kindness over ambition, humanity over personal gain. Maybe the world would not reward him for it. Maybe his chance at that job was gone. But he had stayed true to himself, and that mattered. He thought again of Layla, of the lessons he wanted her to learn. If she asked him one day what he had done when he saw someone in need, he could answer with pride. As he sat there gathering his thoughts, he did not notice a black car pull up quietly nearby. The door opened and a woman stepped out, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. She was dressed now in a clean coat, her hair neatly fixed, her face composed yet curious. It was the woman in the orange dress. Marcus looked up in surprise as she walked toward him. For a moment, he wondered if he was imagining it, if his mind had conjured her face in the middle of his disappointment. But no, she was real. Her sharp eyes fixed on him, her steps steady and deliberate. "You left so quickly earlier," she said, her voice calm but carrying a weight of authority. "I didn't get a chance to thank you properly." Marcus blinked, unsure what to say. "It was nothing," he murmured. "I just couldn't walk past." She studied him for a long moment, as though measuring something far deeper than his words. There was something in her gaze that made Marcus uneasy. Not in a fearful way, but in the way someone feels when they are being truly seen for the first time. "Do you know who I am?" she asked finally. Marcus shook his head. "No, just someone who needed help." Her lips curved into a small smile. "My name is Elizabeth Carter. I run Carter Enterprises." The name hit him like a sudden gust of wind. Carter Enterprises was one of the most successful companies in the city, known for its wealth, its influence, its power. He had seen the name in headlines, on billboards, in articles about innovation and success. The realization that the woman he had helped was the CEO herself left him speechless. Elizabeth continued, her voice softer now. "You missed something important today, didn't you?" Marcus swallowed hard, lowering his eyes. "Yes, an interview. The kind of chance you only get once." "And you gave that up to help me," she said. Not as a question, but as a statement. Marcus did not respond. He simply nodded, his silence heavy with truth. Elizabeth studied him again, and this time her expression carried something more. Respect, perhaps even admiration. She extended her hand to him, her eyes unwavering. Sometimes the real interview is not the one you walk into, but the one life places in front of you. Come to my office tomorrow morning. I would like to hear more about you. Marcus stared at her hand, disbelief flooding his chest. He felt as though the world had tilted on its axis, shifting from despair to possibility in the space of a heartbeat. Slowly he reached out, his hand meeting hers. The warmth of her grip steady and firm. In that moment, Marcus understood that what had seemed like failure was not the end of his journey, but the beginning of something greater. What he thought he had lost was, in truth, guiding him toward a future he could never have imagined. The city around him buzzed on, unaware of the quiet exchange between a weary single father and a powerful CEO. But for Marcus, everything had changed. The unexpected encounter had rewritten the story of his day, and perhaps even the story of his life. Marcus woke the next morning with a restless mind. Sleep had come in short fragments, broken by thoughts of the strange turn his life had taken. The memory of Elizabeth Carter, the woman in the orange dress, the millionaire CEO who had stepped out of a black car and extended her hand to him, felt almost unreal. It was the kind of moment people might describe in a story or a movie, not something that happened to a man who lived paycheck to paycheck, who struggled just to keep the lights on, who had been quietly fighting battles most people never noticed. Yet the memory was clear, etched into his mind like a light cutting through darkness. She had asked him to come to her office, and her words echoed in him again and again. Sometimes the real interview is not the one you walk into, but the one life places in front of you. Marcus wanted to believe her, but doubt pressed against his chest like a heavy stone. What if she had only spoken out of kindness, only to soften the guilt she might have felt for making him late? What if he went to her office and was turned away at the door? He thought of all the times hope had risen in his life only to collapse, and he feared this might be another of those cruel tricks. Yet as he stood by the small bed where his daughter Layla was still sleeping, he knew he could not let the chance slip away. If there was even a small possibility that Elizabeth Carter had meant her words, then he owed it to his daughter to follow through. He prepared breakfast quietly, frying the last egg and toasting the last slice of bread. The refrigerator hummed softly, nearly empty now. Layla woke to the smell of food, her eyes bright with the simple joy of a new day. Marcus placed the plate in front of her with a smile, though inside his chest worry gnawed at him. "Daddy," she asked between bites, "how did it go yesterday? Did you get the job?" The question pierced him. He hated to disappoint her, hated to let her see the cracks in his strength. He hesitated, then answered softly, "Not yet, Princess. But something else might be happening." "Something I didn't expect?" Layla tilted her head, curious. "Like what?" Marcus smiled faintly, brushing her hair back. "Like maybe life has a different plan for us. Sometimes when one door closes, another opens. We just have to trust it." She accepted the answer with the kind of faith only a child can have, nodding and finishing her breakfast. Marcus clung to that faith, using it to steady himself as he dressed once again in his suit. He pressed his shirt carefully, polished his shoes until the cracks shone less, and practiced standing tall in the mirror. He told himself again and again that he belonged in any room he walked into, that he was not defined by the weight of his struggles but by the strength with which he carried them. As he dropped Layla off at Mrs. Jenkins's apartment, the elderly neighbor studied him with keen eyes. "You look nervous," she said knowingly. Marcus gave a small laugh. "You could say that. I'm meeting someone important today." Mrs. Jenkins patted his arm. "Remember, son, important people are still people. They breathe the same air you do. Don't be afraid to stand tall." Her words sank into him like seeds finding soil. He nodded gratefully and continued on his way. The city was alive again, brighter now that the rain had cleared. The sun glistened on windows, and the sidewalks were crowded with people heading to work. Marcus walked among them, feeling the pulse of the city in his steps. His nerves built with each block, but beneath the nerves was a quiet resolve. He was not walking into an ordinary office visit. He was walking into the unknown, into something that could either shatter or transform his future. When he finally arrived at the towering building of Carter Enterprises, he stopped for a moment at the base of it, staring upward. The glass walls reflected the morning light, stretching into the sky like a monument to power and success. The people walking in and out carried themselves with confidence, their tailored suits and polished shoes marking them as professionals who belonged here. Marcus swallowed hard, suddenly aware of every threadbare edge of his clothing, every crack in his shoes. He almost turned away, almost convinced himself that he did not belong. But then he pictured Layla again, her smile, her innocent trust, and he forced his feet to move forward. Inside, the lobby gleamed with polished marble, tall ceilings, and quiet elegance. The receptionist at the front desk looked up as Marcus approached. Her professional smile did not falter, but her eyes flickered briefly over his worn suit. Marcus cleared his throat. I'm here to see Ms. Carter. She asked me to come. The receptionist raised an eyebrow, but before she could respond, another voice cut through the lobby. Mr. Hayes. Marcus turned to see Elizabeth Carter herself descending a staircase. She was no longer in the orange dress from the day before. She was now dressed sharply in a tailored suit, her presence commanding the room without effort. People around her seemed to move with subtle respect, parting slightly as she walked. She approached Marcus with the same calm authority he had seen in her eyes the day before. I'm glad you came, she said, her tone even but carrying warmth beneath it. Marcus nodded, his voice catching. Thank you for asking me to. She gestured for him to follow, leading him through sleek hallways into a private office. The room was spacious but not overly decorated, its large windows overlooking the city. She motioned for him to sit, and for a moment, Marcus felt the strangeness of it all. He was sitting in front of one of the most powerful women in the city, and she was looking at him as though his story mattered. Tell me about yourself, she said simply. Folding her hands on the desk, Marcus hesitated. He was not used to being asked that question in a way that felt genuine. Usually, people only wanted to know his qualifications, his experience, the lines on his resume. But Elizabeth's eyes held curiosity, as though she truly wanted to hear the person behind the papers, so he told her. He spoke about Layla, about raising her alone after her mother had left. He spoke about the odd jobs he had taken to keep food on the table, about the nights he went without sleep, about the determination that had kept him going when everything else seemed to fall apart. He admitted his fears, his mistakes, his regrets, but he also spoke of his dreams, his hunger to build something better, his belief that integrity mattered more than ambition. Elizabeth listened without interruption, her gaze steady, her expression unreadable. When he finished, there was silence for a long moment. Then she leaned forward slightly. You missed your interview yesterday because you stopped to help me, she said. That tells me more about you than any resume ever could. In my company, I need people I can trust, people who see more than just themselves. Skills can be taught, character cannot. Marcus stared at her, hardly able to believe what he was hearing. Elizabeth continued, I want you on my team. It won't be easy, and I don't give handouts. You will have to prove yourself every day, but if you're willing, I am offering you a position. For a moment, Marcus could not speak. His throat tightened, his chest ached, and his eyes burned with emotion he fought to keep contained. He thought of Layla, of the empty refrigerator, of the promises he had made. He thought of the man he wanted to be for her. Slowly he nodded, his voice trembling. I'm willing. More than willing. Elizabeth gave a small nod, almost like a seal of approval. Then let's begin. As Marcus left the building that day, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter than it had in years. He had sacrificed his interview, his carefully planned chance at success, and yet life had opened a door he never could have imagined. The sacrifice had not destroyed him. It had revealed him. And as he walked through the busy streets, the city no longer felt overwhelming. It felt like it was finally, at last, beginning to make space for him. The days that followed felt like a dream Marcus was afraid to wake from. Walking into Carter Enterprises as an employee instead of just another applicant felt unreal. The polished floors, the tall glass windows, the hum of productivity around him, all of it seemed like a world he had only ever observed from a distance. Yet now he was part of it. At first he carried himself with quiet caution, afraid that at any moment someone would realize he did not belong, that they would discover the cracks in his shoes, the struggles that followed him from his old life, the weight of his responsibilities as a single father. But with each passing day, he began to understand that Elizabeth had not hired him by accident. She had seen something in him that he had never allowed himself to fully recognize: strength, integrity, and the ability to stand firm even when life pushed him down. Marcus was given tasks that tested him. They were not glamorous assignments, not leadership roles or projects that carried prestige. Instead, he was placed in roles that demanded attention to detail, patience, and persistence. Filing reports, organizing logistics, managing small teams to ensure that deadlines were met. To some, it might have seemed ordinary, but Marcus treated every task with the seriousness of a man who understood how much was at stake. He arrived early, stayed late, and poured himself into the work with the same devotion he gave to raising his daughter. Slowly, he began to earn the respect of his coworkers, not because he tried to impress them, but because his dedication spoke louder than words. But even as he adjusted to his new role, Marcus could not stop thinking about Elizabeth. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. In meetings, she was sharp and direct, her words cutting through confusion with ease. She carried herself with an authority that commanded attention. Yet behind that steel exterior, Marcus sometimes caught glimpses of warmth, moments where she seemed to soften when speaking to employees about their struggles or offering encouragement when things became difficult. He began to wonder what kind of life had shaped her into the woman she was. To the world, she was a CEO, a powerhouse, a symbol of success. But Marcus had seen her differently first, mud-stained, helpless on a rainy street, in need of help just like anyone else. That memory stayed with him, reminding him that beneath the surface, even the strongest people carried moments of vulnerability. One evening, after finishing a long day of work, Marcus found himself summoned to Elizabeth's office. The sun had already begun to set, casting golden light across the city skyline. He entered her office nervously, unsure what to expect. Elizabeth was standing by the window, her silhouette outlined by the glow. She turned as he entered, her sharp gaze softening slightly. "Sit down, Marcus," she said. He obeyed, his heart pounding. Elizabeth studied him for a long moment before speaking. "Do you know why I stopped you in the lobby that day? Why I asked you to come back here?" Marcus shook his head. "I only thought, maybe you felt sorry that I lost the interview because I stopped to help you." Elizabeth smiled faintly, though her eyes remained serious. "Pity has nothing to do with it. I don't build my company on sympathy. I build it on strength and character. What I saw in you that morning was not a man who missed an interview. I saw a man who made a choice most people would not have made. You gave up something you desperately needed because you could not walk past someone who needed help. That told me everything I needed to know about the kind of man you are." Her words struck Marcus deeply. He had always thought of himself as someone who simply did what had to be done, nothing more. He never thought of himself as exceptional. Yet here was a woman who had built an empire, telling him that his character mattered more than any resume or degree. Elizabeth continued, her voice softer now. "Do you know how many people walk past opportunity every day without realizing it? They think opportunity comes in the form of interviews, promotions, contracts. But sometimes it comes disguised, as a stranger in trouble, as a sacrifice that feels like a loss. Life tests us in ways we don't expect, and most people fail because they choose convenience over compassion." "You didn't fail. You passed." Marcus felt his throat tighten, his eyes burning. He thought of Layla, of the example he wanted to set for her. He realized that the very thing he had feared, the loss of his interview, had been the key to something far greater. Elizabeth walked closer, leaning against her desk. "I built Carter Enterprises from nothing. People think it was money or luck, but it wasn't. It was grit. It was sacrifice. And when I look at you, I see that same grit. That's why I hired you. Not because you helped me, but because in helping me, you revealed who you really are. And that's the kind of person I want in my company." The revelation hit Marcus with a force he could barely contain. All the years of struggle, of being overlooked, of feeling invisible, it all seemed to shift in that moment. For the first time, he saw himself not as a man barely surviving, but as a man capable of more, worthy of more. Elizabeth's words lit something inside him, a fire he had long thought was gone. That night, as he returned home, Marcus held Layla in his arms a little tighter. She asked him about his day, her eyes wide with curiosity. For the first time, Marcus felt he could tell her with confidence, "Daddy's future looks bright." The refrigerator was still not full. The bills still waited on the counter, and the road ahead was far from easy. But Marcus no longer saw those things as chains holding him down. They were simply hurdles to be crossed, steps on the path to something better. The revelation Elizabeth had given him was not just about work. It was about life. She had shown him that integrity had power, that character could open doors no resume ever could. and that sometimes the greatest opportunities came disguised as losses. As he tucked Layla into bed that night, she smiled up at him. "You're my hero, Daddy," she whispered sleepily. Marcus kissed her forehead, his heart swelling. For the first time in a long time, he believed her. Marcus stepped into Carter Enterprises the following morning with a mixture of anticipation and disbelief. It was as if the city itself had shifted overnight, painting the streets in brighter colors as though congratulating him for daring to show up. The building felt less intimidating this time, though it still towered above him like a monument to ambition and success. Each polished tile beneath his shoes echoed a rhythm that matched his heartbeat, fast, tense, but full of hope. He had been given a second chance, one that he had never expected, and the weight of it was both thrilling and terrifying. Elizabeth greeted him at the lobby, her presence commanding yet reassuring. There was a faint smile on her face that hinted at recognition, as if she already knew the story Marcus carried within him. "Good morning, Marcus. I'm glad to see you," she said. Her voice carried the authority of a CEO, yet the warmth beneath it made him feel unexpectedly at ease. He followed her through the hallways, noticing details he had overlooked the day before: the hum of computers, the organized chaos of teamwork, and the quiet determination that seemed to pulse through every employee. For Marcus, who had long lived in a world defined by scarcity and struggle, this was a revelation. He had seen ambition before, but never like this. Here, effort was rewarded not only with success but with recognition, and each act of diligence seemed to echo through the walls of the company. Elizabeth led him into a small conference room. The furniture was modern but comfortable, the windows allowing sunlight to stream in and illuminate the space. She gestured for him to sit across from her. "Marcus, today is not just about a job. It's about proving that your choice yesterday wasn't a one-time act. It's about showing that integrity, perseverance, and compassion are qualities you bring to everything you do. Are you ready?" Marcus nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Yes, ma'am. More than ready." She smiled faintly, her eyes sharp yet kind. "Good. I want you to take on a project that will test more than your skills. It will test your judgment, your patience, and your ability to lead under pressure. Success here could open doors that you haven't even imagined yet." As she explained the details of the project, Marcus felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The tasks were challenging: coordinating multiple teams, managing tight deadlines, and ensuring the smooth execution of a high-profile client order. It was daunting, and he knew that failure could feel crushing. But he also understood that this was exactly the type of challenge he had longed for. For years he had survived by doing what was necessary, by keeping his head down and following instructions. Now he was being asked to rise, to prove himself, and to shape outcomes that mattered. Marcus threw himself into the project with the same determination he had carried through every hardship. Each day began before the sun rose, with him reviewing plans, checking schedules, and ensuring that every detail was accounted for. Each evening ended with him sitting at his desk, analyzing results and planning for the next day. Mistakes were inevitable, but he treated each one as a lesson rather than a failure. The stakes were higher than ever, but so was his resolve. The employees around him began to notice the difference. His co-workers, initially skeptical of the new hire who had arrived through unconventional circumstances, now watched with growing respect. Marcus did not flaunt his opportunity, nor did he seek to dominate. Instead, he listened carefully, contributed meaningfully, and treated everyone with respect regardless of their position. Slowly, the perception of him shifted. What had begun as curiosity about the man who had helped Elizabeth became admiration for someone who led not with authority, but with example. One afternoon, Marcus encountered a problem that seemed impossible to solve. A critical shipment was delayed, and multiple departments were at a standstill. Panic was rising among the team members, and he felt the pressure pressing on him like a physical weight. He took a deep breath, recalling the lessons he had learned as a father, the importance of patience, empathy, and clear thinking. He organized a quick meeting, listened to each person's perspective, and proposed a solution that accounted for the urgency while considering the limitations of each team. His plan worked, and the tension eased. The room filled with a quiet energy of relief and accomplishment. Elizabeth observed from a distance that day, noting the way Marcus handled the crisis. Later, she approached him quietly in the hallway. You see, Marcus, this is what I meant when I said the real interview is in the choices you make and the challenges you face. You didn't just handle a problem. You inspired a team to follow you. That is leadership. Marcus felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of pride and humility. For the first time in years, he realized that opportunity was not about luck or timing alone. It was about readiness, about the willingness to act with integrity and courage when the moment demanded it. His sacrifice from the previous day, the interview he had missed to help a stranger, had been the first step, but this was the part where he proved to himself that he belonged. At home, he shared the day's events with Layla, who listened intently, eyes wide with fascination. "Daddy, you're amazing," she said simply, her voice full of admiration. Marcus smiled, brushing her hair back. "I'm just trying my best, sweetheart. That's all anyone can do. But I hope that someday, when you face hard choices, you remember that helping others and staying true to yourself can open doors you never imagined." Layla nodded solemnly, her small hands gripping his. "I will, Daddy, I promise." The days turned into weeks, and Marcus continued to excel. The project he had been assigned not only succeeded, but exceeded expectations, earning praise from senior management and clients alike. His life began to shift in ways he had only dreamed of. His salary allowed him to move into a better apartment for him and Layla, with enough space for her to play and study comfortably. He began to feel the stability that had always been just out of reach, a sense of security that allowed him to breathe a little easier at night. But more importantly, Marcus felt a transformation within himself. He realized that his value was not measured by the size of his paycheck or the position he held, but by the courage, compassion, and resilience he carried. The second chance Elizabeth had offered him was more than just employment. It was an opportunity to step fully into the person he had always wanted to be. One evening, Marcus sat by the window in his new apartment, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. He thought of the rainy morning when he had stopped to help a stranger, and he smiled to himself. That moment, small and seemingly insignificant at the time, had set in motion everything that followed. The sacrifice he had made, the choice to act with empathy rather than ambition, had not closed doors. It had opened the one door that truly mattered. He realized then that life was full of these unexpected opportunities. They came disguised as challenges, setbacks, and even failures. But when met with courage, integrity, and compassion, they could transform ordinary people into extraordinary ones. And Marcus understood that he had been given a gift, not just the job, not just the stability, not just the recognition, but the realization that every choice, every action, and every moment of integrity mattered. As he closed his eyes that night, Marcus felt a sense of peace he had never known before. He had been given a second chance, but he knew it was up to him to honor it. And with Layla sleeping soundly beside him, he whispered a quiet promise to himself. He would never forget the lesson of that rainy morning, and he would live every day in a way that made both his daughter and the world proud. Marcus awoke that morning with a quiet sense of purpose that he had never felt before. The events of the past weeks had reshaped not only his circumstances, but also the way he saw himself. No longer was he just a man struggling to survive, carrying the weight of responsibility alone. He had become someone who could influence outcomes, inspire others, and provide for his daughter in ways he had once only dreamed of. Yet this transformation was not instant. It was the culmination of countless small choices, sacrifices, and moments of courage. Each step he had taken, from helping a stranger in the rain to showing up every day at Carter Enterprises with unwavering dedication, had built him into the man he was now. The morning light streamed through the windows of their new apartment, warm and inviting. Layla was already awake, bouncing on her bed with the kind of boundless energy that only a 7-year-old could possess. Marcus smiled at the sight, the sheer joy in her movements filling him with pride and hope. He had promised himself and her that he would create a life where she could thrive, where she could dream without limitations, and now he finally had the means to do so. He kissed her forehead gently. "Good morning, Princess. Ready to start the day?" Layla grinned. "Yes." "Daddy, can we have pancakes today?" Marcus laughed, feeling the lightness in her voice as a balm to the heaviness he had carried for so long. "Of course. Let's make them extra special." As they prepared breakfast together, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them here. He remembered the countless nights he had spent worrying about bills, scrambling to find work, and feeling the isolation of raising a child alone. He remembered the loneliness that came with long hours, the quiet despair of missing opportunities, and the overwhelming fear of failing his daughter. Yet through it all, he had held onto a core belief that his actions, no matter how small, mattered. That integrity, empathy, and perseverance could guide him through even the darkest days. By mid-morning, Marcus left Layla in the care of Mrs. Jenkins, the kind neighbor who had become a steady presence in their lives. He walked to Carter Enterprises with a renewed sense of confidence, not arrogance, but quiet certainty. The building no longer felt intimidating. It felt like a place where he belonged, a place where he could contribute meaningfully and be recognized not only for his skills, but for who he was as a person. Each step was lighter than before, filled with anticipation rather than anxiety. At the office, Marcus was greeted by colleagues who had come to respect him for his diligence, his calm leadership, and his willingness to listen and collaborate. The project he had completed last month had set a standard, but Marcus knew that this was just the beginning. Today, he would take on even greater responsibilities, mentoring new employees, overseeing complex operations, and ensuring that the company's standards were met with excellence. Each task he approached with the same principle that had guided him throughout his life. Treat every person with respect, act with integrity, and give your best in every moment. Elizabeth Carter appeared at his desk, her presence commanding yet reassuring. "Marcus, I've been watching your progress," she said. "Your dedication has exceeded my expectations. But more than that, you've inspired others around you. That is the mark of a true leader." Marcus felt a warmth in his chest. He had always associated leadership with authority and power, but now he understood that true leadership was about influence, example, and integrity. It was about creating an environment where people felt valued, motivated, and empowered to succeed. He realized that this principle extended beyond the office into every aspect of life, from raising his daughter to building relationships based on trust and respect. Throughout the day, Marcus continued to demonstrate this approach. He patiently guided a new employee who was struggling with the complexities of the workflow, offering encouragement and practical advice. He coordinated with multiple teams to ensure deadlines were met without causing unnecessary stress or conflict. And in moments of difficulty, when unexpected challenges arose, he remained calm and focused, modeling the kind of resilience he had learned over years of personal struggle. By the afternoon, Marcus was invited to a meeting with Elizabeth and several senior executives. The room was tense with anticipation as she introduced him. Marcus has not only completed every task assigned to him, but has transformed the environment around him. His commitment, integrity, and compassion have set a new standard for our company. I want him to lead a new division, one that will directly impact our growth and client satisfaction. Marcus felt a wave of disbelief and gratitude. He had started as a single father struggling to survive, unsure if he would ever have stability or recognition, and now he was being entrusted with a leadership role, one that would shape the future of a major company. Yet he understood that this opportunity was not simply a reward for past actions. It was a challenge, a responsibility, and a chance to prove that his transformation was genuine. He accepted the role with humility and determination. "Thank you, Ms. Carter," he said. "I won't let you down," Elizabeth smiled. "I know you won't. Remember, Marcus, the greatest transformation is not just in circumstances, but in character. And you've already shown that yours is strong." The days turned into weeks, and Marcus's life continued to evolve. His new position allowed him to provide a stable and comfortable life for Layla. They moved into a home with space for her to play and explore, a place where she could study without distraction and dream without limits. Marcus invested in her education, nurturing her curiosity and confidence. He spent time with her not just as a father, but as a mentor, modeling resilience, integrity, and compassion in everyday actions. In the office, Marcus's influence grew steadily. He built teams that worked efficiently and harmoniously, earning the admiration of colleagues who had initially doubted him. He introduced small initiatives that improved workflow, communication, and morale, demonstrating that leadership was as much about empathy as it was about strategy. His success was not just measured in numbers or profit margins, but in the positive impact he had on the people around him. One evening, as Marcus returned home from work, he paused to look at the skyline of the city. The lights twinkled like stars brought down to earth, and he felt a sense of gratitude so profound it brought tears to his eyes. He thought of the rainy morning when he had stopped to help Elizabeth Carter, of the choice he had made to act with compassion rather than self-interest. That single act had changed the course of his life, not because it was grand, but because it revealed who he truly was. He entered the apartment to find Layla drawing at the kitchen table, her small hands busy with crayons and paper. "Daddy," she exclaimed, running to him. "Look at my picture." He knelt down beside her, examining the drawing with genuine interest. "It's amazing, Princess. You've captured everything perfectly," she beamed, her joy infectious. Marcus realized in that moment that transformation was not just about his career or his financial stability. It was about the life he was creating for his daughter, the example he was setting, and the legacy of integrity, kindness, and perseverance he hoped to instill in her. As the evening settled in, Marcus reflected on his journey. He had faced countless obstacles, moments where failure seemed inevitable and opportunities that appeared lost. Yet through every challenge he had remained true to his principles, guided by compassion, integrity, and determination. The transformation he experienced was not sudden. It was the result of years of struggle, lessons learned, and choices made in alignment with his values. He understood now that life's true rewards were often hidden in plain sight, revealed only to those who acted with courage and selflessness. The second chance Elizabeth had offered him was more than a professional opportunity. It was a testament to the power of character, the impact of small acts of kindness, and the capacity for human resilience to turn adversity into triumph. Marcus knew that his story was far from over. Challenges would come again, and opportunities would test him in new ways. But he no longer feared them. He had seen the results of integrity in action, and he had experienced the profound effects of empathy, courage, and perseverance. He was no longer just a man struggling to survive. He was a father, a leader, and a living example of transformation in motion. As he tucked Layla into bed that night, she whispered, "Daddy, you're the best dad in the whole world." Marcus kissed her forehead, his heart full. "And you're my greatest reason to keep becoming better, Princess. Always remember, kindness and courage can change your world." In that quiet moment, as the city slept beneath a blanket of lights, Marcus felt the truth of his journey settle in his soul. Life had given him a second chance, and through it he had transformed, not only his circumstances but himself. He understood that the greatest victories were not measured by wealth, position, or recognition, but by the courage to act with integrity, the compassion to help others, and the persistence to rise again when life demanded more than you thought you could give.